Never mind that Keith and I had picked devil's food with raspberry filling, and Helene had nixed our choice. "Wedding cake is white," she decreed. She immediately changed our cake to lemon chiffon with buttercream filling. After fighting with her over every detail, I was willing to concede. "You did a great job with all of this." Keith gave my hand a squeeze. "You should be a wedding planner." "Thanks," I returned his smile. The truth was, though I loved to execute a plan, I was annoyed I'd carried out Helene's version of a perfect wedding. I'd actually had fun when I'd forgotten it was supposed to be my own wedding. I'd relished meeting with vendors and getting every detail just right. More than once over the past year of planning, I'd fantasized about becoming a wedding planner, especially when things got hairy at my law firm. The only problem was, I felt like Helene's planner, not the bride. But that wasn't what mattered. What matters is I'm marrying the love of my life in just a few weeks. "This cake is too dry. It crumbled to bits and pieces the instant I touched it with my fork." Helene got up to find the manager when he wasn't instantly at her beck and call. "What happened?" I gestured around the empty ballroom with a helpless wave of my hand. "We wanted to get married at the courthouse, with a small reception on Mount Washington overlooking the city, or take up my mom and stepdad's offer and get married at their house in Florida. How did we end up here?" "We can still elope." Keith's eyes twinkled. Before I could ask if he was serious, his cell phone began to vibrate, dancing sideways across the white tablecloth. I glanced at the screen. Becca Cunningham, a first-year associate he worked with. "Gotta take this. It's for the Emerson case." Keith stood and dropped a kiss on top of my head. He walked out to the country club's deck, overlooking the swollen Monongahela River, leaving me at the mercy of his mother. I frowned. Keith and I were attorneys at different firms. I'd met all of the young attorneys he mentored, and I didn't trust Becca Cunningham. She was gushy and obsequious and had failed the bar twice. Ever since Keith made partner this past spring, she'd latched onto him and his cases. I suspected she'd made herself indispensable to avoid getting fired if she didn't pass the bar this summer on her final attempt. I glanced out to the deck, where Keith was talking on the phone, animated and pacing in the July sunshine. A shadow passed behind me as Helene returned to the table. "Watch your weight, dear. We wouldn't want you to stumble in the home stretch and undo all of your hard work. You need to fit into that dress." Helene snapped me back to reality. She didn't mean the dear part. Her eyes were all ice and daggers. I had gotten out of shape from working long hours at the firm and dining out. I'd recently slimmed back down to the size I'd been in college, thanks to all of the early morning runs I'd been squeezing in these past 3 months. Still, I couldn't get rid of my stubborn little belly, a vestige of cortisol and stress and all-nighters at the firm, fueled by takeout and lattes. My reply stuck in my dry throat, so I washed down the last bit of cake with a swig of champagne. "Don't worry, Helene. The dress will fit just fine." I seethed, but I was determined to be civil. "This is almost over. 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks." Helene's flinty eyes skipped over my now empty plate to my stomach. She reached down and pinched my side through my thin cotton dress. "Ouch!" I tilted back, hooking my chair's legs on the faded green and pink rose carpet, barely catching myself as I started to fall backward. Helene threw up her bejeweled hands. "Just be careful. You need to look perfect, and I can tell you don't have an inch to spare." Keith chose that moment to walk back in. His face fell. "Everything okay?" "I was just complimenting Mallory on her discipline with her figure. She'll be a magnificent bride."